The Draft Ranking Show with Cody Carpentier and Maddie Kiwoom is back. It's been about 6 weeks, Maddie Kiwoom, but we haven't stopped working. We just pulled off a little bit on the show to continue grinding on these rookies, to prepare for the Senior Bowl, to prepare for the Combine that's coming up in 3 weeks. I just got home from the Senior Bowl. You, unfortunately, just got done shoveling 18 inches of snow for the last 18 days. But we are still pumping through the winter as we lean towards the Combine and the NFL Draft. I want to start out with one thing because we're preparing for a Super Bowl coming up this weekend with the New England Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks. On the feet of a general manager just getting fired very late in the process, some might say. The last day of January, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah gets fired from the Minnesota Vikings after I saw him walking around the sidelines at the Senior Bowl. Maybe he wasn't watching the players, but he was fired by the Vikings the day the Senior Bowl closed this weekend. They moved on. We talked about that in our Team Builders series back in December, the Vikings situation and kind of the writing on the wall for Kwesi. But we also talked about, amongst other teams like the Broncos and Bears, who made a run in the playoffs, the New England Patriots, who you got to watch get back to the Super Bowl this last weekend, Maddie Kiwoom, and how important Mike Vrabel, Stretch, Elliott Wolf, and guys like that have been to this rebuild. How are we feeling up in New England about this whole Super Bowl bounce back, I guess we'll say?
I mean, the boys are back in town. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Patriots back in the Super Bowl. But, what did we highlight throughout all of these team building 101s, these team building profiles, was the connection, the synergy from quarterback to coach to GM to owner. And when those things align, it really shows out well. I mean, we highlighted what's been going on in Denver, Chicago, New England, as you talked about. And it just seems as if, we were onto something. We were kind of able to put our detective hats on, our analysis hats on, and kind of pull up some information. I think it was a good exercise. It was definitely fun to do. Now we are in February, our first show of 2026. It's very exciting to be a part of it. The snow last weekend up here and across the country was disgusting, or as you guys say over at Ross, watch maniacal. But what it did was stop me from traveling down to Mobile, which absolutely sucked. But, the show moves on. I've been working, as you said, behind the scenes, and we're ready to bring a whole lot of talk about what's going down in Mobile.
So, as you mentioned, we're going to talk about some of the Senior Bowl. We're going to talk about some risers and fallers from the week. Me and Alex were down there. Maddie watched a little bit of it on the computer, on the TV, whatever source he used, whether it was iPad, TV, phone, doesn't really matter. He got his eyes on
Stallions.
He got his eyes on some prospects. Yeah, courtesy of potentially Connor Stallions. Not sure. Maybe not. Maybe. We're talking about the risers and fallers, but I do want to make a mini announcement. We're back full-time, 5 days a week on the Draft Ranking Show. It'll be on the podcast feed, and it will be on YouTube 5 days a week. Me and Maddie will be Monday and Wednesday talking every single week. And then Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday will be classic, the 10-minute morning show that I did a year ago, where it's not going to be in the morning. They're all going to come at 7 p.m. every single day. Every single day, 7 p.m. on YouTube, and then 7 a.m. the next morning on podcast. Make sure you're subscribed to the Draft Rankings podcast feed to get all 5, because there's only going to be 2 shows a week on the Player Profiler main feed. The rest will all be on the Draft Rankings show feed on podcast and, of course, YouTube. But like I said, all 5 will be on the Draft Rankings podcast feed. So we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Please click that like button. Please click subscribe. And if you are on pod, we got a 1-star review like last month, Maddie, which really turned the kilter on our rating. We're like a 4.6. So that's some fugazi. That is some diabolical shit that needs to be reversed. So anybody that goes out there, please drop a 5-star. It would be mucho appreciatio on Apple or Spotify. Maddie, let's jump into it.
Let's do it.
Senior Bowl. Risers and fallers. This conversation has to start with one name. Tyron Montgomery, or Ty Montgomery, some people call him. Wide receiver, John Carroll. Now, in years past, this role at the Senior Bowl might be your Denzel Mims. It might be, potentially a Michael Wilson from Stanford who came in, was really banged up. But these are Power 5 level guys that came into the Senior Bowl, had big weeks, and then they were kind of okay. People, Michael Wilson really didn't do much until this year in the NFL, right? Denzel Mims never
Right.
really hit. Tyrone Montgomery, the difference here with Tyrone Montgomery, people will say, let's small school guy, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to hear it. Division III. But the story here, Maddie, and this guy jumped off the field. Not even off the screen, off the field. I
Yeah.
never watched this guy before. 5'11", 100 and I think he was 86 pounds, 190 pounds, 5'11", 190 pounds, 9-inch hands, good stuff here. John Carroll, Division III, by way of Nichols State. This guy grew up in Texas. He went to LSU to become a walk-on basketball player, didn't make it. During COVID, he's playing catch with his brother, who I think is quarterback, and I want to say it was like North Carolina A&T or North Carolina Central, some small school.
Yeah.
So during COVID, he's just catching passes, running routes with his brother. And eventually, as COVID goes by and his brother's getting ready to go back to school, he goes, "Are you going to do the damn thing? Are you going to go and try to play some ball or what?" And Ty's like, I mean, I guess. So he goes to Nichols State, which is local down in Louisiana. Doesn't really do anything. He's doing track at the time. He's doing like long jump and stuff, which will come back into the conversation. After 1 year, Nichols State transfers to John Carroll. He's played football, Maddie, for 2 years of his life. 2,800 yards, 36 touchdowns later, he gets the invite to the Senior Bowl after a big week at the American Bowl. They got eyes on him, and he came down, and he's turning everyone's heads. GMs, coaches, scouts, everybody's talking about this kid. And the one thing that really gets you stuck in a tizzy is it's not just like, oh, this guy's going to run a 4.2, he's going to blaze past everybody. The only really problem I have with him is sometimes his change of direction on like whip routes and stuff like this in short areas can be a little bit sticky. Like it wouldn't surprise me if he ran like a 7.05 and like the 3 cone. Wouldn't shock me, but that's not his game. The slants are perfection. The comeback routes, he put Colton Hood, he sent him into oblivion. Colton Hood, the Tennessee quarterback, supposed to be a first rounder.
Mm-hmm. Who had a great showing, right? Colton Hood had a good showing.
Very good showing. But the bigger thing was he had 2 maniacal catches. One in the end zone, one down the left rail, where he went up and he levitated and he stayed up. And my instant thing was long jump. He told us he long jumped. And I said, Alex, I'm punching out. I said, Alex, that's the long jump. The long jump is coming into him catching this football. Like it makes sense because he's transitioning from sport to sport. He goes up, he levitates, he hangs and hangs. His timing's great. He hangs. The cornerback comes back down. He catches it. He's a foot over the top of the corner. You're talking Muhammad. You're talking Chris Johnson. You're talking Chandler Rivers. You're talking Colton Hood. All of them. Igbinosun. All of them. Mawson. Running past him. I think he's going to run 4.39, 4.38, 4.40, something like this. This guy is easily the biggest riser of the week in Mobile. It was in not a great class because Casey Concepcion didn't show up, which we expected him to. Malachi Fields was okay, but this guy was, and people knew who Ted Hurst was going in. Ted Hurst had a great week, but this guy took the cake from the fantasy positions for sure.
I remember right after his first practice, I get a text from you. Hope you could get your hands on some John Carroll tape. So I'm like, okay. I Googled John Carroll, expecting to see a running back, offensive lineman. We loved the kid from Alabama A&M last year. And so I was just like, okay. Then I didn't see. So our football team. So I was like, all right, let me just go look at the roster over at, seniorbowl.com. Look at the roster. John Carroll. Oh, receiver. Ty Montgomery. And then from there on, it's off to the races, learning about his interesting story that you talked about. And, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're not talking about the 5th receiver in the class. We're not talking about a first-round pick, but we're talking about a guy who could find his way, off the board early day 3, coming from a D3 school at a skill position. That doesn't happen often. So it's very interesting to see, a cosmic rise, and well-deserved, because not only did he show a leaping ability, separation, it was just like one of those all-around showings that you go like, in a dream world, you can close your eyes and see this kid getting 8 targets in the NFL and being nasty with them. And just with that alone is going to cause this guy, like I said, to be a 5th, 4th round pick in the NFL, which is exciting. Very, very exciting to see. Whereabouts do you think he'll settle in your post-Senior Bowl receiver ranks? Because I'm looking at mine, and the name that really is going to be the big difference maker for me is that Bryce Lance, Chase Roberts tier.
Mhm.
Right around wide receiver 16, 17. That's kind of where I think I want to get that buzz going. Where do you kind of have him?
Higher.
Higher? Dang. Jeremy Bernard?
Ooh, not that high.
Okay. So
I
you
like Bernard though. I'm a big Bernard guy.
Okay, so all right, so maybe like wide receiver 12, like right around Omar Cooper, that kind
I
of
think he's
range.
going to be in the conversation to bust to the top 10. Like I think that's going to be the conversation.
Dang, that's gonna be a
I mean,
all right. I'm here
he
for it.
immediately. This is the wild thing is he went from, and you know how this works with these D3 guys. It's like you might get a workout.
You might get a workout, yeah.
Like Silas Bolden went from Oregon State. He was a super fast guy, ran a 4.4, punt returner, was at Oregon State, transferred to Texas, didn't do a lot the last year at Texas. And then he was like chilling. Am I going to
Yeah.
make a team? Am I going to get a workout? I think he ended up getting a workout with the Vikings, made the fall camp roster or the fall training camp roster, but didn't make the team. It's like you're just at that point, you're looking to get a workout. But
Mhm.
that's a Power 5 kid. People know
Yeah.
how fast he is. This is a kid from John Carroll. It's like if nobody gets eyes on this kid, nobody's going to have eyes on this kid.
Mhm.
And he went from basically a UDFA to people are talking about him as a top 100 pick. Like, is he going to be a day 2 guy? Is he going to get out of day 2? How is this thing
Right.
going to lay out? Because he's definitely going to be round 4 or 5 worst, like round 4 worst case scenario. He's going round 4. That's kind of the situation. I mean, because how untapped that is, people are looking at that and it's like you're looking at this guy going like this. He's still in this. He's still learning football.
Mm.
Like if you have the right, imagine you had like imagine Brian Hartland didn't take the USF job. Brian Hartland was like, yo, I'm going to be the receiver coach at, the Giants.
Yeah, or what if he just goes to a team like Detroit, can learn from Amon-Ra. He goes to
Amon-Ra
Minnesota,
and
can learn
J-Mo?
from.
Oh my
Yeah, I'm
plants.
just saying, like, there's these wide receiver rooms, these Super Saiyan receiver rooms of intelligent, high
Yeah.
IQ, skilled receivers. So you go to one of those teams and you get this kind of ball of clay with this type of potential. That's why he's the first guy we got to talk about coming out of Mobile.
Yeah. 100%. Who caught your eye?
For me, it wasn't even a riser, so to speak. It's really just everyone getting that splash of water on their face, kind of waking back up. I got to talk about TJ Parker, Cody, because that is a guy that I have not wavered on one bit. Had him in my mock. We'll do dueling mocks in the next episode. So make sure you guys come back next episode to watch me and Cody break down our latest mocks in the NFL cycle. But I still have him as top 18 player. But he goes down to Mobile, and he just reminds people, like this is why I was being talked about as a top 5, top 3 edge rusher in this class. Long, explosive, nasty. He was putting together reps that you just go, oh man, that was something. And now we just have to have this conversation where when we get our eyes on the kids coming from the Clemson program, are we going to have to just say 2025 was an absolute train wreck? Because Peter Woods, his name's kind of fallen off, but I still like Peter Woods. Antonio Williams is going to be a guy that if he has a good showing in Indy, again, you're talking about upward trajectory. He's another one. Cade Klubnik. I mean, no one down in Mobile said, hey, guess what? I'm quarterback 3 in this class. It's me. Maybe it's Garrett Nussmeier, but it's kind of like by default, right? Not really. No one sees the day. So I think we're going to look back on this Clemson team and be like, oh, all right, well, I guess we kind of throw away 2025 because I think we're all going to be reminded of how good this team should have been by the draft prospects. And it starts with TJ Parker down in Mobile, put together good rep after good rep after good rep, has the size, the length, the prototypical, long arms that the NFL loves, those guys that can get their paws on you before you even know what's happening. And he went down to Mobile and he freaking bullied some, offensive linemen around, and he's going to be right back in that first round conversation.
The most interesting thing about him was it was a really tough group to come away with. Just we did the all roster watch team for the Senior Bowl. It was 15th annual this year, and D line was 100% the toughest. It's like linebacker on day 2, early on, we were like, all right, lock it down. J. Rod, Kyle Lewis, Pittsburgh, lock it in. It's over with, done. Period. End the discussion. D line, it was like, how are we going to get 4 dudes on this list?
Mm-hmm.
Because it was such a good group. And yeah, I mean, there was guys that pulled out. The Miami guys didn't end up going. Makes total sense because of the championship game and stuff. But I mean, you go through that whole defensive end, edge, D line, even include the D tackles, the whole group, top to bottom. Like, it was a big task for TJ Parker. But again, he came in with the gravitas. He came in with the, hey, we're expecting this guy to be a top 10, top 15 talent, and lived up to it. Which, again, like you said, him and Peter Woods, the two Clemson kids, have dealt with this almost like negative press or negative energy because of the whole Clemson situation. Still had fine seasons. They weren't all American level seasons, but he went down there. Romello Height, Zion Young, Derek Moore from Michigan,
He looked good.
LT Overton from Alabama was kind of not fun to watch all week. Tyreek Sapp, I was expecting more of him from Florida. Not a good week. Tons of D tackles in this group. Grayson Holton from Oklahoma. Like, he was one of the 4 that made our all roster watch, all Senior Bowl team. I think Parker put his name, kind of like, didn't really put his name, I guess kind of put his name back in that top 15 kind of, or people would say every year, right? There's 14, there's 16, there's 17 first round players. TJ Parker solidified himself and took himself from like, he's bubble, maybe we'll see what happens, to, yeah, he's a first round pick, period. Like, he's one of the 16 or whatever the number ends up being. I haven't gotten that far yet, but whatever the number ends up being, Parker's going to end up with the first round grade for me.
Yeah, and you kind of look at the class as a whole and how it materializes, the power vacuums that are created and who seizes throughout the steps, right? And you kind of look at the edge rushing class, and what do we always say, Cody, on this show? The NFL draft cycle doesn't start in February. It goes 24/7, 365, and it just goes around and around.
Yeah.
Don't be shocked if you hear Bain, Bailey, and then TJ Parker in terms of the edge rushers coming off the board.
I think so. I mean, it's going to be interesting. The biggest conversation, we'll talk about that when we do the mocks on Wednesday. But man, the biggest thing with those dudes, with that group of, Bain, Bailey, Reese, Parker, they're all different from each other.
Yeah.
Like,
it
all really just depends on who wants what when. It wouldn't shock me if any one of those guys goes in front of any other of those guys. Even if it was Parker that goes on the board first, wouldn't really shock you. It wouldn't shock you as much as Clelin Ferrell, shout out Clemson, going 4th overall to the Raiders. Like, Parker going ahead of those other guys wouldn't shock you that much, really, when we get down to the final line and we're talking about it in Pittsburgh. So Parker deserved this conversation. The next one I'll bring up is our guy from Iowa, the offensive lineman, Jennings Dunker. Jennings Dunker was, so we've talked about him for the better part of the last, 6 months. Obviously, we haven't done a show in a month and 6 weeks, maybe, whatever, total 6 weeks. But we talked about Dunker on a number of shows. You've had him in your mocks. I didn't have him in my last mock in the first round, but I do have him in my mock that dropped today on rosterwatch.com. I did have him in round 1 for that. Dunker made the All-Senior Bowl team, and Dunker put himself into this first round conversation to where I think he's now, where he was like a very volatile piece for the first round to now being like, yeah, we probably got to get him in there. I don't know if he's going to quite have a first round grade. I think Alex is even heavier on him than I am, but I think he's probably going to be in that fringe 15 to 25, 15 to 30 category, kind of where Gray Zabel, Cody Moss.
There it is right there.
These guys have lived the last couple of years. Dunker was one, it was like the first name. It was like we got down there on I mean, I guess we got down there early, but we get down there on Monday, get Tuesday for the first day of practice. And our biggest takeaway, and Alex said this. Alex said, our biggest takeaway, we do top 10 thoughts at the end of every practice. Our biggest takeaway since maybe Eric Fisher in 2013, Jennings Dunker, clearly the best player on the field today for either team. Obvious top 15 pick, maybe higher. That was what Alex said.
Damn.
And Dunker was, I compared it to, so a couple weeks ago, and another one of the reasons that we haven't done a show is travel and stuff for the last
Yeah.
month. But I was in San Antonio for the Navy All-American game for high school to college kids. And there's this offensive lineman named Malachi Lee who's going to Michigan. And this dude is built like a refrigerator. He's a guard. And they're not built the same. He's not built the same way as Dunkers. And that's not what I'm getting to. What I'm getting at is when you walk out on that football field and you see Malachi Lee and you see the rest of these high schoolers, you're like, well, that guy looks like he's getting ready to go to the league. The rest of these kids look like they're getting ready to go to college.
To go to John Carroll.
Sure. Right? And but here's the thing. There's 4 and 5 stars on that field with him.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
With Dunker, he's out there and there's, a Northwestern, a Kansas State, an Arizona State, this, that, and the other. They're good athletes. Some of them are a little pudgy. Some of them, carry their weight not great. This dude looks different than everybody else. It's almost like we're standing there during the media breakfast and just watching Dunker come in, and he's just so like lean and clean and cut. And you're like thinking back to like Tristan Wirfs coming out of Iowa, right? Remember the picture of him jumping out of the pool?
Mm-hmm.
And like that athleticism, he's not quite that athlete, but he's that cut up. He doesn't look like he belongs playing like tackle. He's not just a classic fat tackle, right? Or a fat guard. And they had him playing all over. They had him playing, I think he had left guard, and right tackle. They had him playing all those positions.
Gray Zabel, you said it, man.
They may have plugged him in at left tackle too. I don't think he ever snapped the ball, but he's moving all over the offensive line. Jennings Dunker, like in a class that has some tackles, but they're not like stamp it all pro tackles. And it has honestly not that great of in my opinion, not that great of a center guard group overall as far as top end talent. I think this guy's, I haven't gotten through all the interior offensive linemen. From what I've seen, which is clips and tape from the Shrine Bowl, obviously being at the Senior Bowl, and then some of the top dogs across the country, I think he's, if not the top, maybe 2 or 3 overall offensive linemen in the class.
Huge riser. I mean, if you play receiver, you play edge rusher, you play quarterback, you play offensive line, you go down to Mobile, you have a really, really classic showing, dominant showing, you make millions. Dunker making millions. And we've now seen it. The NFL craves this style. Yeah, maybe he's not a left tackle straight up and down. But was Gray Zabel? Nope, first-round pick. Was Graham Barton? Nope, first-round pick. These guys are getting in the first round because of versatility, willingness to play multiple positions, showing the ability to play multiple spots on that O-line. Dunker, I'm happy to hear that he went down there because that nasty streak that I see on film was what made him a player that I was just not going to take in my rankings. I don't care what the outside world was telling me, because the NFL loves those type of players. Like, and now can Dan Campbell look himself in the mirror and say no to Jennings Dunker? Nah.
So we'll move on. Where did you put him in your mock?
I have to. Let me spoil it for the people listening, I guess, is what you're asking me to do.
Yes, I had him fall past Detroit, but that's only because another offensive lineman was at.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and you know what? I not to give away too much, but you are very much good. Like, I think you were good in that regard, because the player that you had going there is someone that when we get into the mock draft conversation, I obviously love.
I think I love him too, but I think he ends up going higher. But the way that thing unfolded, I ended up with Dunker and the Chargers with Harbaugh, and I was like, yo, this is kind of sick. Like, that's 22nd overall. Does he make it there? I don't know if he really does in the end, but it's kind of a nasty landing spot.
Well, that's why great minds think alike. I have him going 22 to the Chargers. That's where I have him. because another player fell to Detroit that I think they wouldn't be able to pass up on. That it's that simple.
Unreal. People are gonna think we looked at each other's mocks.
What?
Who do you got next? Who caught your eye?
All right. So for me, someone that caught my eye was Garrett Nussmeier. And the riser that I'm going to put behind Garrett Nussmeier isn't so much what he did in practice, not so much what he did coming out of Mobile, but just kind of what he was able to do, what he's able to kind of solidify. And I just don't see a scenario where he's not QB3 off the board. I don't see a scenario where he's not in that Tyler Shuck range where he gets drafted by the teams that need quarterback in the early part, the Jets in round 2. I just now think he is so firmly locked in that range because of the professionalism he showed, the accuracy he showed, the decision making he showed in spurts, especially like red zone drills. And then, of course, on the game Saturday, looked completely in control of that offense, scored 2 times in a game that is just become so deprived of plays that get made on Saturday. He was able to orchestrate good drives. And I just think he went down there and just didn't get pushed aside by Taylon Green or Luke Altmaier or Sawyer Robertson. No, none of those guys pushed him aside. And for me, that just it speaks volumes. And now I'm going to have to just overinflate Garrett Nussmeier, and it doesn't really matter about what I see on film or what I kind of look at the analytics. It's just kind of revert myself back to the beginning of the process where he was potentially the number 1 overall pick. No one's really pushed him aside, and then he went down to Mobile and did good enough. I mean, we've had this conversation in the past. 2 guys that come to mind just happened a couple years ago. Bo Nix, Michael Penix, both went down to Mobile, and neither really impressed, but they both ended up being first-round picks because the vacuum of that position and the skill set of that position just got such momentum. They got themselves in the first round. And I don't know if Garrett Nussmeier does that because there's probably only 2 first-round quarterbacks, but I think he did enough to make himself a top 45 pick in terms of my process and my rankings. That's going to be a massive riser.
Yeah, I'm not going to entertain first round conversation for Nussmeier. I mean, seeing him down there, he was good. He was fine. He was competent, but it wasn't even like Kenny Pickett didn't have a great week, but Kenny Pickett had a better week than Nussmeier when he was down there a couple years ago. Same with Malik Willis, and that was a year that we really got into the hype of that. Remember that class with like Malik was supposed to go top 5, and
Yep.
Pickett ends up being the only quarterback that goes, and it was like in the 20s, and I was like, this like in and I like Nuss, but I think there's going to be some big question marks right now that need to be answered in Indianapolis from a testing perspective. To see if he's healthy long term, I think there's some question marks there. Can I ask you this question? So if you're GM looking at it right now, you just came out of the Senior Bowl, you see Mendoza, you see Simpson, you're thinking, damn, I probably am not going to – well, I'm obviously not going to get Mendoza. Probably not going to spend first-round capital on Ty Simpson. I need a quarterback, though. And you're sitting – let's say you're sitting in the 50s or the 60s or something, and you want to add a quarterback. Let's say you're the Rams, right? And you want to add a quarterback, and you're looking at Nussmeier. He's there. But right now, we don't know if Trinidad's going to be there. Trinidad could be a guy that all of a sudden, like a week from now, we could find out that he's, completely getting shut out. He's not going back to college, blah, blah, blah. He's in the draft. And he's going to have a pro day. He's going to be at the combine. Well, actually, I'm not sure if he's going to be at the combine or not. We'll see. He's not going to be there right now. But let's say this whole thing solves itself out. He's at the combine in 3 weeks. Then you have Carson Beck, who's been a winner his whole career. Klubnik really didn't do enough at the Shrine Bowl. From the people I talked to at the Shrine Bowl, they were not impressed. More impressed, honestly, with Taylon Green at the Senior Bowl than they were, and Cole Payton from North Dakota State, the lefty, than they were of Cade Klubnik. The one name I have interesting thoughts on is just I want your immediate thoughts here because we're talking QB3, and F it. We'll just bring it up.
Yeah.
Drew Aller broke his ankle in October. He's going to show up in 3 weeks, I assume, and he's going to let that 70-yard arm unleash in Indianapolis. And he's going to come in 6'6", 235, and if he interviews well, like he's going to have a pro day. he's still 6'5", 6'6", 235-pound quarterback. That's not athletic in this class. So my question to you is this: you're a GM and you're looking at quarterbacks, and Nussmeier's got some question marks around his knees. Chambliss potentially isn't even going to be in this thing. Beck is Beck. Klubnik didn't impress. Taylor Green's super athletic. Cole Payton's a lefty from North Dakota State with 240 dropbacks. And then Drew Aller's in the middle of this whole thing. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that whole mosh right there if you are looking for a quarterback in the late second round?
By default, Drew Aller goes up, could easily go up to the top once he proves he's healthy. But I think in terms of an NFL front office, I think all the names that you just mentioned can only get to Garrett Nussmeier's tier. And maybe their preference is Chambliss. Maybe their preference is Green. Maybe their preference is Aller. So they take that guy. But Nussmeier's going to be in that tier. He's going to be in that range. And unless someone emerges, in Indy at their pro day, then yeah, I just think it's going to be it's the Nussmeier show, because Nussmeier, as long as he could prove that he's pretty healthy, and these NFL evaluation, these standards for health, as long as he's not degenerative knee condition, he's going to get the bill of health. He's going to get the okay from the NFL, and he's got the pedigree. He's got the father in the NFL. Like, not claiming any type of nepotism or nothing like that. I'm just saying that pedigree, that mindset, that growing up in the sport just breaks ties. So, you talk about Chambliss, you talk about Aller, Klubnik, Beck, those guys. The conversation starts with Nussmeier, and it will throughout the rest of the process based on what I saw down in Mobile. It's just based on August scouting, stage 1 scouting, stage 2 scouting, and now stage 3 scouting. It's just no one sees the day. Aller, though, that's a great dark horse to pull up, because Aller will always have the what if factor. And the NFL loves what if scenarios and solving problems that they can't really know the answer to. And I could see Drew Aller skyrocketing up the board because of that reason. But I don't know if he really passes Garrett Nussmeier in a significant way.
All right. One other name I just want to bring up at the quarterback before we move on is Pavia. Pavia was the most consistent quarterback all week, made the most big throws, had the most dog, obviously. I thought showed himself well off the field. I think it's going to be very, very, very interesting how interviews unfold in Indianapolis. We heard last year coming out of Indianapolis how the Shador stuff supposedly went, was rumored to go. McShay tried to ankle to everybody what was going to happen, and people didn't want to hear it. There's rumors that Pavia is kind of going to have that energy, but man, seeing Pavia, talking to Pavia, I don't get that. I don't get that energy. I get it on between the white lines, but off the field, I haven't gotten that energy from him ever, outside of that combine or outside of that Heisman, after party situation and whatnot. So, and outside of him being 5'9" and 7/8", which burns, it sucks.
Yeah,
that dude can play football, and he did really well in 7-on-7, which again has no offensive line. And they brought the offensive line out, and dude was still making throws. So Pavia is going to be very interesting, because there's going to be a lot of teams. Most teams probably don't have him on the board, period, because of his size.
That's right.
And I think there's going to be a couple teams that might just be like, you know what? We gave Trace McSorley a shot, and this guy's much more talented than Trace McSorley. We gave Dylan Gabriel a shot. This guy's got a better arm than Dylan Gabriel. Like, I think he's going to get an opportunity, so it's just a name, in a class that's not that strong. I already mentioned Cole Payton and stuff from North Dakota State. I'm going to rip off a couple of names here just really quickly. I'm not going to dig too deep into them. I want to get out of here in a couple of minutes here. And then I'll let you say a couple names and we'll get out. My most impressive cornerback at the event wasn't Colton Hood, the cornerback from Tennessee. The Tennessee group obviously has a couple of names here: Jermod McCoy, Colton Hood, the top two. Not the best cornerback for me at the event. I know your guy Chandler Rivers was down there. Honestly, didn't really notice him that much.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of off the, not looking. It's kind of how I like to. I don't want to look for you. I want to be able to just like look over, see a play happen, and then watch it unfold without really recognizing the helmet. Chris Johnson had a good week from San Diego State, but the Malik Muhammad, I've watched enough Malik Muhammad. I know who he is, and he kind of just showed me who he was. So it's not really a takeaway for me. The bigger takeaway for me was Davison Igbinosun, the cornerback from Ohio State, who stands. I think he's like 6'2", 195, somewhere in this area. I don't have the exact numbers up from the weigh-ins, but he was a cornerback from Ohio State that got a lot of praise last year. He's got over 2,000 defensive snaps in the last 3 seasons at Ohio State. Very veteran corner, playing on the outside, played a little bit in the slot, but not too much. Igbinosun, really, the only guy that really got Igbinosun this week was Ty Montgomery. Like, otherwise, he was my favorite cornerback of the week. And right now, the mock draft database and PFF and all this stuff, they aren't giving Igbinosun a lot of love, and I think he should be in the conversation to be a top 50 to 60 draft pick in this whole thing. We talked about a lot of the edge guys. I think two of the defensive tackles that caught my eye the most. Grayson Holton from Oklahoma. That dude's motor is something. Like, I think he might talk the most trash outside of Caleb Banks, the defensive tackle from Florida. Caleb Banks doesn't shut up. Like, he's on you, even if he doesn't make a play. Like, that dude's got the motor that's like all in, he'll kill you. And then someplace it's just like patty cake, Baker's man. Caleb's, that's what it is. Grayson Holton, on the other hand, is undersized and the motor's high. I think he's like 6'1", maybe 290 to play in the defensive line. He's a dog. Lee Hunter from Texas Tech, in that whole disgusting Texas Tech defensive line, another big dude. That dude carries his weight pretty well. He's got kind of small lower half, but he was miles better, in my opinion, than a Tim Keenan from Alabama. I thought he was the best D tackle there, pound for pound. And then a sleeper one, which was much further down, was Devin Eastern from Minnesota. That dude, I got him on the All-Senior Bowl team at like the last minute. He had a great day too. And then on day 3, I went down there and I stood behind the one-on-ones for like the whole like a whole session or two. And that dude just kept winning and kept different ways. 6'6", 320-pound defensive tackle from the University of Minnesota, redshirt senior. This guy played inside out, A gap, B gap, you name it, at Minnesota. I didn't know a lick about him, but he's that guy that's outside the top 200 right now, kind of on the consensus. He's another defensive lineman that kind of caught my eye.
Yeah, defensive line really showed out. I think as a whole, Mobile kind of highlighted a couple of things that wide receiver might be a little bit deeper than I thought, and defensive line is definitely a lot deeper than I thought, that I initially would expect. Some guys really kind of took advantage of their reps down there. You talked about Caleb Banks. He had some absolutely dominant reps. I think he solidified himself as a top 20, 25 pick, maybe even the first defensive tackle off the board. So I think defensive line was a treat down there, and that's exactly what you had said. We're not getting that. We're not heading down there to see the skill players. We're not going down there to see the quarterbacks. We're going down to see the trench warfare brothers and the guys in the defensive secondary. Now, there were some linebackers. Rodriguez showed out pretty well. Luis showed out pretty well from Pitt. There were some really good linebackers. I think this linebacker class looks pretty dirt McGirt. And I think that's going to hurt some of the names that we're, very excited about. Anthony Hill, I think that hurts him a little bit. Not so much that they're not good, but teams may not push, Torian York, Dante Lawson, Anthony Hill Jr. into the first round or in the top 45, because when they get to those picks, they go, I'll go elsewhere because this linebacker class is so deep. With obviously the guys at the top, Allen, Styles, Reese, but then Hill, Rodriguez, York, Lawson, now Luis, Golday from Cincy, who's getting round 1 mocked by Mel Kiper or one of those big time, guys. So, I mean, the linebacker class looks very, very deep. So I think that was what we kind of learned down in Mobile, that this is a not sexy draft class. It's a deep draft class in the positions that don't have a ton of draft value. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that all plays out. Do we see 2 guards and 3 linebackers go in round 1? I mean, you could make that argument now coming out of Mobile, and could we only get 3 or 4 receivers? I think that is now also on the table. So it doesn't seem to be a very sexy surface draft. The premier positions don't have the hot rods sprinkled throughout, but there's going to be some really good players And there's going to be some names that we learn real quick at the NFL level, and that journey really kind of either solidified itself or started in Mobile.
Were you more of a like Malachi Fields guy, or did you have a preference at the receiver position of those guys?
I did not like Fields going in, but he showed up well enough that he's going to skyrocket my ranks. But again, that's just the nature of the volatility of the position. Like, I mean, it's just so wet blanket that it's not going to take much for these guys to catapult themselves. I mean, a kid went from D3 and he's in your top 12. He's in my top 15. That's just the nature of this position after the top 3 or 4.
Yeah, I think Fields. I mean, I wasn't the biggest Fields knower, I'll say. I didn't watch the most Notre Dame games, even though they're on national TV every single week on NBC. But and he's an interesting one. And I told Alex this. I was like, his hands came in at 8 6/8 inches, so 8 3/4, which is very small.
Yeah.
And like Anthony Miller, 10-inch, Odell Beckham, 10-inch, like DeAndre Hopkins, like pause.
Clip it.
He didn't have small hands. I shook his hand. I've shooken dudes' hands that have had small hands. He didn't have small hands. So I'm interested to see like maybe, and we've seen this
stretch
before where guys that
stretch.
Like because he had a sub 2% drop rate. Like he caught everything this week.
Mm-hmm.
And just like, I wonder if his hands are just kind of like, you know how like the old dudes like Mike Irvin and stuff, like their hands are just kind of like this. And I wonder if he's just a little tight. Like I wonder if he opens that thing up, if he goes from 8 3/4 to like 9.5.
Yeah, we just assume that all of these kids know the game of getting drafted, and they don't always. They're not all about the NFL draft. A lot of these kids they pay a lot of attention to their daily routines. They're being successful at football, and they don't understand necessarily that you have to like stretch and figure out this way to just get the most out of it. Like they might not know that. We can't just assume they know all the tricks of the trade this early, but I guarantee you his hands will probably grow at the combine by hook or by crook because you mentioned it. And listen, again, take it for what you will. I don't know anyone in the biz that understands the physiology of these prospects more than you. I remember at the combine, you'd be like, that guy's 245. And I'm like, oh, okay. Nope, 245. Like, nah, that guy's listed at 230. Nah, he's 215. He was 217. Like, so if you say his hands are bigger than the what he measured out, I'm gonna take it with a grain of salt until Indy.
I'll take it. I'll take that. All right. That's the show. We'll be back Wednesday. I'll be back tomorrow with a 10-minute, 7 p.m. Get it on YouTube. 7 a.m. on Wednesday. You can get it on podcast. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. And we'll be back with more tomorrow.
Peace.